Hi everyone, my name is Hafsa Lodi. I'm a fashion and culture editor based in Dubai, and I'm so honored to be joined here today with Megan Hess. Whimsical illustrations of romantic, glamorous dresses so beautiful you want to frame them. These are the key components of a Megan Hess book. Megan is a celebrated illustrator who has worked with some of the biggest fashion houses. She's drawn, written, and published many books, and I'm delighted to discover her latest, Fashion in Color, with you all today. The beautiful hardcover tome explores how luxury fashion houses have used color, with stunningly illustrated examples interwoven with fun history lessons about particular pigments. Let's watch a short video to see some of Megan's beautiful work in action. What a beautiful video. Thank you so much for being here today, Megan.
Oh, my pleasure.
So you've illustrated the creations of fashion houses from Fendi to Louis Vuitton and captured the dreamy escapism of brands like Disney and Bloomingdale's, in addition to publishing numerous illustrated books. How has all of your work led you to this moment, this project, Fashion in Color?
It's interesting because I have worked on lots of different fashion books about different designers or different assets of fashion, whether it's dresses. And I think I reached a point where there was something that kept coming back to me, which was colour, and just the fact that certain colours are associated with certain designers and certain moments in fashion. And I think for years I thought colour is too simple a topic for a book. But then as the years went on, I kept thinking, no, it's so simple, but it's actually one of the most powerful things that tells a fashion story, tells a garment story, and it brings a complete mood or emotion to what someone's wearing. And so I thought, it's time to do a book on this.
Definitely. Was there one kind of outfit or brand or project that you illustrated that kind of gave you that inspiration that, oh, one day I need to do a book centered on color because of how color was portrayed in that particular design?
I think, I don't know if it was one specific garment, but I think I remember looking at a really great silhouette, and I think it might have been in something like Valentino, and it was in black, and I love black as well, despite the fact that I'm always kind of in pastel colours. I do wear a lot of black, and I love black too. And I remember seeing this dress and then seeing it then in the softest, palest pastels. And the dress in black had a complete, it was identical, but just that same dress in a soft colour, it went from being something very, very dark and dramatic and powerful to feeling like something very soft and almost fairy tale-like, and it's the exact same dress. So I think I started to really think about the fact that colour can be an even bigger part of a garment than the shape and cut.
I mean, aesthetically for sure, but even psychologically, different colors can have different effects, soothing effects, calming effects, triggering effects on us. It can really change your mood as well. Have you found that in your experience?
Yes, completely. And it's a really interesting area, colour. It's interesting to me, the colours that people choose. And there's often colours that we all avoid. You know, I wear a lot of pink, but you know, lots of women avoid pink because they're worried about how they'll be perceived if they wear it. There's lots of people that don't ever like wearing really dark colours. Some people feel really down if they're in greys and browns and earthy colours. Other people feel completely grounded and like themselves if they're in greys and greens and earthy colours. So I think, you know, often people who are very vivacious and outgoing feel really great in a yellow or an orange, and other people can feel self-conscious in those colours. So I think it is psychological. You are drawn to it for different reasons, and it's more than just what suits you, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I'm actually working on a story right now about the return of maximalism in fashion. So apparently these Pinterest trends forecasted that maximalism and bold colors are set to return. And we've seen this whole quiet luxury trend of just neutrals recently. But these maximalist colors and this kind of more colorful approach to fashion can really bring out your personality and can also make you feel more lively and happy.
Yeah. I think that, and it's interesting too, because colours, as you know, working in fashion, they come and go. At times, some colours, you are sure they're never coming back in that, but they come back. And even within colours, if blue becomes, a sky blue becomes, whether it's chosen by Pantone or it's just a colour of the moment, it's often a very specific shade of that colour. And then, interestingly, when you see the collections, if it's not that shade, there's something psychological that tells you that's not quite the colour that's in fashion right now.
Yeah.
It's an interesting...
Yeah, I love that. And there's a whole field of color psychology as well.
Yes.
Did you have to go research that or go through any of that, dive into that when you were working on this?
I mean, I looked at a lot of the sort of origin of certain colours, and it's interesting because it's not something that I thought deeply about, like the fact that purple, even like the colour of your trousers, was very much something that was linked to royals, and it was only something that, the very influential had back in the past, which is why when you think of seeing like a king or a queen with their velvet cape, it's often in a purple or a lilac colour as opposed to being in yellow.
Yeah. So there's a lot of history lessons woven through your book, and I think with the color purple, you mentioned a story with Queen Marie Antoinette that she introduced this color to the court. Could you tell the audience a bit about that?
Yeah, I didn't know this till I was researching the book, but I thought this was really funny. Marie Antoinette discovered a color that she really loved, and it was like a purplish brown. Okay. And so she showed this to the court and to her husband and everyone and declared this would be the next color. And I think it was her husband said it reminded her of fleas, which sounds not like a compliment, but apparently it was kind of an endearing term that you would call each other in French, my little flea. Anyway, that then became true to, as she said, that became the colour of that decade, and it became the popular colour in everything from flowers to clothing, and against all odds.
And you talk a lot about contemporary examples of colors on celebrities, and in movies with glamorous settings and scenes. How important would you say an actress's outfit is, or how important is her costume in kind of setting the tone for her character?
I think it's really important, and I think often the clothing on characters in film, the ones that have become iconic, I don't think you can ever predict that before it happens, that it'll become a moment in fashion. I think everyone aims for that, probably with their film, but certain films just achieved that. And I love the example of Pretty Woman with Julia Roberts, that film. Apparently that red dress, which she's very famous for, where Richard Gere snaps the box and she laughs, apparently she was meant to wear a black dress.
Oh, wow.
And just before they shot the scene, something was wrong with the black dress, it didn't fit. And they said to the wardrobe assistant, can you rush, you need to rush out and grab a different dress. We need to shoot the scene, has to happen today, just get us options. And they came back with this one red dress and it fit Julia Roberts perfectly, and that became an iconic moment in film. And I think the fact that it's red and she had those beautiful red lips and something about it just stays in our memory, so it just became a moment.
That's crazy. It was accidental, but so impactful. Celebrities can also help make certain garments go viral or sell out, which is often the case with the Duchess of Cambridge. But on the flip side, clothing can also help augment a person's stardom. And you kind of addressed this with a Dior dress that cemented Anya Taylor-Joy as a star. Could you tell us a bit about this dress?
Yeah, this really interests me because I think it was during COVID where people weren't going to award ceremony, people were not going anywhere. And I believe it was for the Golden Globes, and Dior made Anna this incredible emerald green dress. And even though she couldn't attend the awards, because I think the awards didn't actually happen that year, or they happened without people attending, they had made her this dress and they'd been working on it for quite some time. So she came to Dior in Paris and they shot her in this garment as if she was attending the awards. And that imagery of her in that incredible emerald dress just sort of went viral. And it was, I mean, she was already obviously an amazing actress with The Queen's Gambit and would have been successful anyway, but I think that dress really caught the attention of everyone, and it really cemented her as not only an amazing actress, but a style icon.
And I guess, speaking of the circulation of images, how would you say social media has kind of impacted how we view color? Do you think we're more open to maybe certain colors because we see them on social media in a really cool fashion image and it looks really good on someone, and we might think, oh, I'd like to try that color out, even though I never thought of trying it before?
Yeah, I do. I think it's interesting. I think social media does have an impact on that. And I think to an extent, certain people present their feeds with a certain colour scheme as well. And you'll notice there are certain people that like to try and keep it quite neutral. And so in one way, they're kind of locked into this. It's a funny thing to me in a way, because it's almost like if you've chosen basics in terms of neutrals, black and white, and not wearing colour on your feed, that then sort of dictates what you wear in your real life. Yeah. Likewise, if you choose that your feed has to be quite colourful, you then you don't really want to post yourself in a beige outfit, which is kind of sad.
Yeah, I'm guilty of this completely. My feed is all pastel and colourful, and I can't wear black then and post it.
Yeah. So I think that's how social media has come in. Before social media, we would wear what we felt probably more in that moment, what we felt comfortable in, but now we do think about how that will look.
Yeah. I also like that your book really goes through every color, and oftentimes, especially with all these trending TikTok aesthetics, we get locked into an aesthetic. Like, cherry tomato or tomato girl summer, something was trending last year, and you think like, that's my aesthetic, or my aesthetic's dark literature, dark academia. There's all these different aesthetics, and it kind of does lock you in and limit the colors you wear. In what ways is that kind of too restrictive?
Yeah, I think anything that's restrictive isn't great. That's my personal opinion. I think that there's definitely colours that, I always say that you should wear the colours that make you feel good. And often we do choose colours that suit us more for whatever reason, and that makes us feel better. But I think variety and wearing different things. For me personally, I always feel like I love to dress for what I'm doing, and I've always dressed this for. If I'm doing a book launch, I will wear the colour of the cover of the book, and I can't not do that now. And it's almost like, I know no one cares, but
No,
it's just,
we have
it's
to.
like I couldn't wear a red dress if I'm launching a pale blue book. It would
Yeah.
it would visually cause me stress.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, it restricts you, but then it also lets you have a lot more fun within that little realm of, okay, my color scheme is blue, so what can I do creative with blues then?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So part of it's just diving into the world of that. I mean, I love in a personal sense if I'm traveling somewhere warm and it's tropical and sunny, I love being in lots of color.
Yeah.
And if I'm in Paris and it's winter and it's cold and the trees are all grey, I don't want to be in lots of colors. It's sort of messing with my mood. I want to be in something kind of greys and black and browns and comforting warm colors.
I love how you point out the spectrum of effects a color can have in the book. So like orange, you point out how it is on prison uniforms and orange is the new black. It's kind of garish and not something we'd want to embody. But then conversely, it's associated with luxury, with Hermes. So did working on this book help you shift perspectives when it came to certain colors? Did you see certain colors in a new light?
Yeah, that orange is a really interesting one. I think you said you don't love orange.
I don't love orange.
I think orange is an interesting color. It's like yellow. They're two colors that worn well and confidently, I think, look fantastic, but they're not a color that suits everyone. But it is interesting if you think about orange, and just as you said, the American prison uniforms are those orange jumpsuits. And there's something about that that's just not appealing, probably because the thought of being in one of them is a terrible thought. But as soon as you see an orange Hermes Kelly bag, I love the color. So it's like your mood can change depending on, I think, what context it's in, which goes to show that you can love orange because it's associated with the history of Hermes and the thought of Hermes and the things you love about Hermes. And then when you see it on a prison jumpsuit, it's just, you never want to wear orange again. It's the thought of it's claustrophobic.
I mean, there's also this phenomenon of one color becoming like a trending color of the season. So there's one really strong example of this, Valentino pink, which was showcased in their Fall/Winter 2022 collection. And they really owned that shade of fuchsia, making it like the hot color of the season. It was then picked up by the high street, by premium brands. Why do you, like even today, 3 years later, I'm associating that with Valentino pink. It's not just... I mean, I guess it's that pink over there. Why do you think color trends like this spread and skyrocket so successfully?
Yeah, it's similar to your top underneath.
Oh, yes, of course, yes.
I think it's interesting. It is like that scene in The Devil Wears Prada where they talk about the shade of blue. It's often, I mean, everything does trickle down and it takes time for that to happen, but I think if you first really see that colour come back with a vengeance done in a really strong way, as Valentino did fuchsia, and they did the whole collection in it, everything was in fuchsia, it was so strong, your mind associates that colour with luxury and Valentino. So then eventually down to high street, when you see a sweater or a dress in that fuchsia, you immediately think of Valentino. And that's why that colour then becomes so successful in more of a mainstream way until a different brand a different designer shows you this is the new colour. And then you see it trickle down.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Kind of shows how fickle we are.
Yeah.
You also include some Arab designers in your book, such as Zuhair Murad and Elie Saab. How have these two Lebanese visionaries used color in becoming pivotal names in the wardrobes of international A-list celebrities?
I love these two designers. What I love about their designs is their use of color is not usually done in that Valentino way where it's very so strong in that sense. The designs are very timeless. They're very glamorous, obviously, because they do a lot of couture, but they're very glamorous, and there's a mixture of color with a lot of embellishment done in a way that is never tacky, it's never too much, even though there's a lot of it. There's just something very elegant about both of those designers. And I honestly think that if you had anything from both of those designers, they would still look amazing 10 years later, 20 years later. They're not trend driven. They're driven by a sense of, I think, their culture and craftsmanship, and I'm a big fan.
Yeah, they're very elaborate, which this region always
But elegant as well. Yeah.
Like classy.
Yes.
Yeah. You also include some references to Middle East history when discussing colors such as blue. Could you tell us about how a special shade of blue was created and used by pharaohs in Egypt and then later revived in the 1920s?
Yes. I mean, this was interesting. I didn't know this until I was researching for the book as well. In this day, you just imagine that every color was just always here, but they weren't. And so blue, I believe, was first created by the pharaohs, a certain type of blue, which was by mixing powders, the powder of, I think, ash, sand, and copper. And when they mixed these three together, it created the most intense, beautiful, bright, almost turquoise shade of blue. And so this became something very rare and very special. And that color then, when we get to the Art Deco movement, was kind of brought back again. And that was then sort of very much teamed with gold. And I think this is an example of, within the colour spectrum, some colours have a really great best friend. And they're often a best friend in terms of a colour that is different, but really makes them shine. So blue against that sort of, that really Egyptian blue against, say, lilac, wouldn't do much for each other. But that blue against gold, the blue is even more bright, it's more, you notice it more, it's more contrasty, it stands out. So I think that's when, and when you look back now at a lot of Art Deco jewellery, it's very much a combination of the blue and gold.
And it also kind of shows, I mean, you highlight these contemporary luxury fashion houses, but then going back into history and where these colors are rooted, everything's so cross-cultural. There's such a taking and borrowing from other cultures, which is quite fascinating.
That's so true.
Was there like one key standout thing that you learned that surprised you, or something that was very like, oh, I didn't know that's where that color came from?
A lot of the origins of colours were interesting to me. It was interesting to me that with their greens, there was certain elements of emeralds that came from poisons.
Poisons?
Poisons, yes, which were only discovered at the time when poisons were discovered. And then as they were noticing this and working with it, they were noticing obviously what a poison was doing to plants or to a person or to someone, but they were also noticing how amazing the colour was. Yeah. And so colours were discovered in ways where they weren't necessarily looking for a colour, but they found it.
That's so interesting. It's like there's no inherent positive or negative element of a color. It can be used in both ways. You go through the hues of the rainbow, but you also talk about a monochrome palette and how it's become extremely iconic when it comes to one brand in particular, Chanel. How can black and white, without any pigment or saturation, exude such intensely coveted luxury?
Yeah, I think Coco Chanel, her entire ethos was stripping everything back to being minimal and very classical to what she considered to be both elegant and comfortable. And I think, like everything that she did, she just didn't waver from it. And so therefore she, like all brands that really lasted a very long time, they were often started by someone creative who really believed in something, whether it was a shape or a look or a colour scheme, and they just stuck with it. And that's what she really did with the monochrome colours. She didn't kind of need to dazzle everyone with bright colours for this collection, something crazy for the next. She just kept reinforcing that this is what she felt was comfortable and elegant, and that's what it still is today. So when you see someone in like a very Chanel-looking suit, whether it is Chanel or it isn't, you're immediately brought back to what she created, because that's the aesthetic that she created in the very beginning.
Yeah, but then do you think that stripping a palette of any pigment can then have negative psychological effects?
I think it's interesting. Like when I think outside of fashion, my home, like I love colour in my work, and I love wearing colour, and I love working with colour. But in my home, for example, I like to keep it really non-colourful because for me it's very relaxing to have the colour scheme that I have, which is more golds, cream, black and white and greys. There's something about working in a creative, colourful world of a day and then entering back home into that makes me feel really calm. And I think people that prefer not to wear colour, I think they just feel a better version, they feel their best self, not in colour, which is, there's no right or wrong, it's just whatever makes you feel good, I think.
And speaking of your home, so your home is kind of neutral and, like you said, it's kind of a change from your colorful work. Would you like to talk about how you get into the creative zone, what your creative process is like when you sit down for a project?
So I create most things in my studio, and my studio is also quite white. Again, we do have lots of colour pops in there with flowers and bits of the illustrations and artwork, but I generally keep it quite white because it keeps my mind clear. And then it's almost like even my desk, there's not a lot of colour on it, so that if I am working on something in colour, I'm not sort of visually seeing other colours. Not every artist works like that. I know a lot of artists where there's just colour everywhere and that's what gives them joy and that's what helps them create. But I like a calmness to create, calmness in people, calmness in space.
It makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
And I loved seeing the pen in the video. Is that a special pen that you use when drawing? If you could tell us about the materials you use.
Yes, so I use a whole range of different pens when I'm doing my line work, but I do have one special pen that I call Monty, which is a Mont Blanc fountain pen.
You've been using this for years?
I have had this for years. I think I've had Monty for, it wouldn't be a decade, but quite a long time. And the story of Monty was that I did a collaboration with Mont Blanc, and I was to create 4 pieces that would be then auctioned for UNICEF. And when we met to discuss the project, I was just doodling on some paper with all their pens. And then they thought it would be a great idea if I were to draw the collection with one of their pens. And I thought that was a terrible idea because at the time I used Japanese brush pens and I thought I could never draw anything with a fountain pen. So I said to them, I would love to do that, but I can't draw with a fountain pen. And they said to me, but why? What's wrong? And I was describing that the nib would need to be fat and then thin so that when I do like a lash, it might be thick and then goes off to being thin, or drawing hair. And so, long story short, they said to me, we can make you a bespoke pen. Wow. And you would go to New York and they have a special bespoke room where you get wired up like a sci-fi movie. Wow. And it measures, you draw an electric table pad, and it measures the weight of your hand drawing, the bladder that they call it, how much ink can sit in the bladder of the pen, and how you draw, and all of that. So I did that for about 20 minutes, and then that goes into the computer, and in Hamburg in Germany, then they take 3 months to make a pen. So that's why this pen is very special. So I'm if I ever, I did not bring it on this trip, but if I did ever bring it, I would put it in the safe, but he sits on my desk in my studio.
Yeah. And you have one. It's like a one.
Only one.
Oh, wow.
And I always think if I can't lose it because I can never ask for another one.
Yeah,
that would no.
They'd probably do it for you.
Yeah. Well, I hopefully won't lose it.
Besides your hardback fashion books, which decorate stylish coffee tables around the world, you've also created a children's book character named Clarice. Let's have a look at this little mouse, if we can play the video. She is adorable. If you could tell us a bit about what inspired the creation of Clarice?
Well, Clarice was my first sort of children's book, and I'd already been working on my fashion books for quite a while, and I had been really wanting to do a children's book since I had my daughter. I mean, my daughter is now 18, but when she was little, I was just, every book that we would read at night, and we had some that we really, really loved and still love, I kept thinking, I would love to do a children's book, something that really makes you escape, something that does tap into what I love about traveling and fashion and all these different things that could happen. But it took a while to think of what the actual idea should be. And then when I was in Paris for Fashion Week, one week, and I was at the very end of a trip, and I was sitting on my balcony at the hotel that I stay, and it's one of the prettiest sort of streets in Paris. And I looked across, and I saw a little white mouse kind of pop up and look around, and my mind just went wild as to, look, even though that's a mouse, this is one of the best streets in Paris. There's the best bakery downstairs. Maybe she's got a little apartment. Maybe she has a wardrobe. She could have all these ideas, all these like friends and adventures. And my mind just kind of started picturing this life that this little mouse could have. And so, yeah, that was the beginning of the very first book. And I think now we're up to book 10, I think, something like that. Yeah.
I love it. And I see we have a lot of Clarice fans in the audience as well. Are her outfits all modeled after designer clothes or luxury fashion houses? Are they the inspiration, or what kind of inspires her fashion-forward outfits?
I loved the idea of her having all these adventures and being brave and helping other animals and doing all these things in couture. I just thought it was funny. I just thought it's not practical. Probably overalls is a more practical outfit, or, you know, shorts and a t-shirt, but there's something funny to me about someone doing something, you know, pulling up your couture dress and running and jumping and doing things. I just thought it was great. And I also liked the idea that you can love fashion like I did as a little girl, and that you can enjoy that and wear that and go off and do anything in the world and still help other people, go after your dreams, be strong and be brave. And so that was the combination of it. And her outfits are based on lots of designer pieces, and I think that's always fun to create. In every book, she has a fashion lineup, which is the outfits for each one. And whenever I go to book signings, that's always a page that lots of little kids say to me they love the outfit lineups and they like to pick which one they would wear. So the outfits in it are very important, and I like to try and it's never one designer, it's always like a good mixture. And if she goes to London, she'll wear a lot of London designers.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I mean, you said they're not very practical outfits, but there is this element of escapism when reading children's books, and when kids are also reading about, you know, like it's helping people and little lessons, but it's nice to exaggerate them in these fun, fantasy-filled ways. So how does color factor in for the kids' books then, with Clarice?
Well, this is interesting. The very first book, when she leaves the mountains and dreams of going to Paris, she's sort of just in the mountains with some other mice. So she's made herself a little dress in like a little out of a garbage bag. So she's in this, but it's still of great shape. But it is a garbage bag. And so I wanted the evolution of when she gets to Paris and she can finally kind of make her creations, she sort of steps into then a world of colour. So the colour is very important, and each book has kind of a colour code. So whatever the cover is, so this one's pink, then that will be a very like dominant colour throughout the book in what she's wearing and doing. The book where she goes to the French Riviera, where she's in a blue outfit on the cover, it's in all blues and turquoise throughout the book. So I like to, colour tells part of the story as well.
And is the series complete or ongoing?
It's ongoing.
Good. Yeah, don't end
It's
it.
ongoing.
I would love to open up questions to the audience. If anyone has questions, maybe we can have a mic to go around. You can, when you get the microphone, you can say your name and your question for Megan.
Hi. How did you start writing?
Well, I think, so originally I was more of an illustrator. So before I did my own books, I illustrated books for other people. I illustrated covers for other people too. And then when I did my very first book, which was called Fashion House, when I had the idea for that book, which was illustrated, and it was sort of a fictional book of different people and what their houses looked like, I just wrote that book and showed my publisher, and that's the publisher that I've been with from then and until today. So it was just taking my idea. Everyone's different. I think for some people, they think of what the story would be and they would write the story down. And for me, it was, I could see the entire book visually, so I started to sketch that first, and then I wrote to the illustrations. But now at this point, when I've worked on so many books, it's often a case where I will completely write the story first and then map out in little thumbnails what each of the 18 pages will be, and then I'll illustrate it.
How do you choose the themes?
That's a great question. I always choose a theme that I feel really excited about. That's always the first question. Is this something, because books do take a lot of work and a lot of time. So if I'm kind of like, kind of excited, that's not enough. I have to be really excited about what it is. So say with Clarice, I need to, often for me it's picturing where she'll be. Will she go to Italy? Will she be, where will she be? I like to picture that. And then I need to picture what will happen that will be really fun to draw. And that's where I start, with where it'll be set.
How did you think of Abigail Fig?
I'm glad you've got Abigail Fig is one of my favourite books in my children's series, because she's just so funny to me. In my second Clarice book called Fashion Show Fiasco, in the story of that, I think it's the very last page, she goes to a Chanel fashion show and she's there with all the cool animals of Paris. And the day that's it, that's right. You've got it. And the day that I had to draw that, to hand that book in, I had not decided on what these animals would be. I just, in a day, came up with, aside from the frogs, I thought, I'll put a pig, we'll have a bulldog, we'll have a bird and a meerkat, and I just kind of drew them thinking they'll just be in that book. And then, as the Clarice books went on, we decided to do some spin-off books with the other characters. And so I went back to this page and thought, who is this pig that's there? Maybe this pig is like a spy. Maybe this pig has a whole other life that we didn't know about when this book came out. And so that's how each of those characters came to life.
Which is your favourite Clarice book?
It's a hard one.
This is hard. I always go back to, I think my favourite Clarice book, aside from the first one, because that's kind of sentimental to me, but I love her first Christmas story, which is the fourth book called Holiday Heist. And it's, yes, oh my God, you guys are amazing.
Super fans here.
You guys are like, I needed you on stage. So great. Yes, that one. Yeah, I think that's my favourite story. There's something about that story that I kept, before I even wrote that story, I kept picturing Clarice and Monsieur the cat holding onto the top of a New York taxi, flying through Times Square, and I just love the story in that one. So that one I think is my favourite Clarice story, and I just like I like the cat burglar as well. I like that he's got really skinny legs and he's all these gold chains. There's just lots of things about that book that I like.
What advice would you give to an 8-year-old girl who wants to work in fashion?
I would say whatever you're passionate about, if it's fashion, I would, whenever you see something or think of something that inspires you, have a little sketchbook or a notebook to jot down your ideas. Even if you don't know what about it means something to you. It might be that you see a really great outfit, or you think of a story, or you think of something that is inspiring you to do with fashion, and just jot your ideas down and little sketches and just keep building on that. And then you can go back and look through it, and there might be something there that then makes you think of another thought, and then you might end up drawing like a collection of sketches based on that first dress that you liked. Or maybe you'll think of a story idea of something that could happen around fashion. So I think just keep jotting down ideas and following the things that make you feel happy and joyful. I say that is my biggest piece of advice, to just follow the things that, even if you're not sure why it makes you feel good, just jot it down and keep going back to it.
Hi, Megan.
Hi.
Thank you for being here. You're such a, you've done so much. It's amazing for somebody in fashion illustration who loves it. We use you as our main mentor in the industry.
Oh, thank you.
Just want to know, you have such a repertoire of books and children's books, but when you were doing fashion in color, did you feel there was one color that you hadn't used before, or something just popped out to you that, I've never really, focused on this color before, or kind of brought it into my designs before? And was there a situation like that for you?
Yeah, I definitely did think about the fact that I'd lean more to certain colours more than others. Mm-hmm. And there were certain colours that I didn't immediately think of the fashion moments that came within that colour. So probably purple was one that I don't use a lot of purple for no reason at all, but that was just one that I hadn't used a lot in my illustrations. And interestingly, yellow, when I first thought of yellow, I struggled, but then as soon as I kind of re-delved into yellow, there were so many iconic yellow things that it's actually made me want to look for more lemon and yellow dresses, and this has quite a lemony colour to it too. And obviously black and cream are colours that are featured in a lot of my work, and obviously pink as well. But yeah, probably orange, yellow and lilac and maybe even green. Yeah, so there were definitely things that I discovered and thought to myself when I was putting the book together, I want to do more with those colours.
Great. Just in one quick question,
Yep.
Do you think now, obviously with AI and all the technology that's coming out, how could you evolve to incorporate it somehow in your fashion illustration or your designs, or
Could I...
use AI in any way?
I think that AI is something that is a fantastic tool for certain things. I would resist using it in my work only because I think that in time, as AI will just multiply and multiply and multiply, and in many areas in a great way. And I have a belief that things that are kind of made by hand,
Exactly. Yeah.
very much done by a human, the value of that will be even greater. And I think too, for me, there's the whole enjoyment of what I do is the creative process, thinking about it with my mind, drawing it with my hands. And I think if AI could do it better with me not having to do anything, all my enjoyment's gone. So for that reason, I wouldn't probably use it.
Stick to the basics.
How do you choose the color of the front of your books?
That's a great question. Well, so truthfully, with Claris books, I literally have them in order of what I've created, and I'm literally look at it and think, what is the next color that I haven't used yet? And then I think to myself, okay, so for example, I literally looked at all my Claris books and I thought, I'm back to pink, a different pink to the first one, but I think I will lean into pink for that. And I actually don't know what color I will do next, but it'll be something that isn't the same as one that I've sort of previously done. So it's finding the color that I haven't done before, and then it's marrying that color to an idea of where this could be set or what she could be doing that makes sense.
I have a quick question. Well, we have a Claris in Dubai book.
Yes, I know lots of people have suggested that to me too. Yeah, there's so many adventures she could have in Dubai. Even with what we were talking about earlier, that place you were talking about. Yeah,
Global Village.
I could see Claris doing some fabulous things in Dubai, definitely.
In fact, I wanted to take that further because I was going to say I haven't really read the Claris books, but from what you've been talking about, she's in Italy, in London, in Paris, and Asia. India, for example, has a lot of couture and very, very colorful. So it could be something that you could consider.
Absolutely. India would be an incredible location for a Claris book, just because with all the color, the patterns, the texture. I mean, the amount of adventures she could have in India would be amazing. That's the thing. There are so many places that I think that Claris could go, and there's so many different ideas that I have all the time. I'm constantly thinking of different things that she could be doing, depending on where she is in different places. But definitely India would be an amazing one.
And when you're working on a Claris book, do you go to that specific place to kind of immerse yourself in the surroundings and get inside Claris's shoes?
Well, I wish I could do that. I often, everywhere that she has been so far is somewhere that I have been. And it's somewhere that, and that's, I guess, where the story has come to me. So even when she went to Italy and I pictured her in Venice and going through Rome, and when I was in Italy with my family having a holiday, everywhere that I saw different things, I pictured Claris could get lost over there, and then she could come here. And even in this very latest book, she ends up her atelier in the very, very top of the Eiffel Tower. And that came from when my family went to Paris and we went to the top of the Eiffel Tower and we saw that there's an actual room, apartment, where the original caretaker lived in the Eiffel Tower. So when I saw that, I was like in awe looking at it, and I turned around and looked at my husband, my daughter, and my son, and they all knew. They all looked at me and said, "We know what you're going to say." We know. And I'm like, "You don't know what I'm thinking?" They're like, "We do. You're going to make Claris do something in the Eiffel Tower." I'm like, "Okay, fine. This is going to be her new atelier."
We have time for a few more questions.
Where are you from?
So I'm Australian. So I live in Australia, in Melbourne.
That's where I'm from too.
Are you? And do you live here in Dubai now? Oh, how long have you lived here?
2 years.
2 years. So you're from Melbourne. Oh, nice to meet you.
Have you ever had a big break when you're doing a book?
Do you mean when I'm working on the book and I need to take a break?
Yeah.
Well, this is the tricky thing. When I have all my deadlines for all of my books, and sometimes I really do need to take a break, but it's tricky. The publishing schedule of the books means that I have dates that it has to, the scariest date is the one that it has to go to be printed. And then there's a lot of different things that happen till before that date, like the illustrating it, and then we check all the words, and then I might rewrite some bits, and then we keep kind of finessing it till it goes. So I try to have a little break between books, just so that my mind is clear before I work on the next story. But in reality, I don't get much of a break when I'm working on it. But it's okay, because I love it, so it's a good problem to have.
This is your break.
Yeah, this is my break, completely.
Thank you so much for all of your engaging questions, and we'll have a chance to get your book